Welcome back to the Inspired Hustler. It's been a minute since I've had my dear friend Jeremy. I have missed you. I have missed you. I cannot wait to catch up and find out all of the new things that we talked about just briefly before we got on. But tell everybody who you are and what you do first.
My name is Jeremy Van Wert. You can go to jeremyvanwert.com. I'm a therapist. I am a coach. I help you strategize your life. I help you with your marriage. I help you with your life. I help you with all the stuff that helps you become the highest version of you.
That's a great explanation.
That's
And if you guys don't know Jeremy, go check out all of his social. Go check out TikTok and Instagram and his like what was the viral unfuck yourself meditation?
yeah, it's mindfulness for assholes.
Yes,
And
yeah. A lot of fun. You need to go check him out, and then you'll see. Then you'll see it. I'm sure you're going to want to work with him. So you do so many things. Like you just have such a diverse practice of people that you see and things that you're doing. And just before I got on, I was asking you a few questions, and I want you to share with the audience what you're doing right now with a lot of the work that you're doing right now. That's newest.
So I've developed something called that I'm calling Hope for Men. So I'm a marriage therapist. I've been doing marriage therapy for a really long time. And what I was noticing in marriages and relationships where somebody was cheating, if it was the man cheating, he would often come in and immediately begin lying about what it was that happened. And the pattern that I have seen is that a woman generally doesn't say anything until she has all the facts. And she does the looking through his emails, looking through his texts, looking through all sorts of things, maybe tracking him, and has a strong list of irrefutable evidence about what it is that has occurred. And so when he comes in and he stonewalls and he lies and said, well, it was just a woman at work and we did some flirting by text, but that was it. But she knows it was many women over several years. What
Mhm.
he's doing is he's eroding trust. And so what I
Mm.
do with men is I help them strategize for how to graduate into the better part of themselves because they've been living a lie, they've been living a
Mhm.
fantasy, they've been living all sorts of things that aren't real. And
Mhm.
I help them get real about their lives, stop lying, get humble, and figure out, is there any way that the relationship can be salvaged, that it can be
Mhm.
saved? Because a lot of times it can be saved. A lot of times a spouse really does want to figure out how we can do this. But when the person comes in with lies and
Mhm.
excuses and downplaying and gaslighting, that is what kills the possibility of rebuilding. And I know that you
Mhm.
work in real estate with
Mhm.
situations where people are selling their houses, whether it's financially viable or not.
Mhm.
And these things are absolutely financially devastating for
Oh,
men
yeah.
and women.
And to families. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was just saying to you that yeah, I can't count the situations I've walked into. Not to say that infidelity was always involved, but where a couple will call me and say, "Hey, we're done. We want to list the house," and I come over and say, "The market doesn't agree that this is the time to sell your house." And furthermore, you don't have enough equity for either one of you to go buy something else. So we really need to work together now. I know you called me in to be like, he's bad or she's bad. Let's split. We actually now need to work as a unit and figure out how we're going to strategize to get you both whole financially and get you out of this. So, I mean, it sounds very similar to what you had just said about working with this strategy. Your goal is not to come in and say, yeah, split, there's too much distrust. The goal is to be able to rebuild. And I don't think I've heard that previously from any other marriage counselor when infidelity is involved.
Well, and here is what I consistently hear, and I hear this also from colleagues as recently as a couple of hours ago, and it's how do you do it? How do you
Uh-huh.
work with these pieces of shit? And the truth of it is that they're just like anyone else. And men and
Hmm.
women, they end up having affairs a lot of times because
Hmm.
there's something missing,
Uh-huh.
because they've maybe wrongfully emphasized the attention in their lives, and
Mm-hmm.
they're giving their work team more attention. They're giving their
Mm-hmm.
social life too much attention. Or there is some kind of withdrawal that happens within a marriage, which is common to happen when people
Mm-hmm.
have children, where one or the other stops feeling truly uniquely loved. And
Mm-hmm.
that goes on for quite a long period of time until, but before someone starts flirting at work
Uh-huh.
or with somebody that they met online, or they're on Ashley Madison or
Mm-hmm.
something like this, where they're actually actively seeking another
Mm-hmm.
person to have an affair with. And so what often happens is the person that gets caught all of a sudden they're to blame for everything. Now, this is a
Mm-hmm.
delicate subject because
Uh-huh.
nobody who's been cheated on wants to hear for a single second that any part of it was their own fault.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's certainly not what I'm saying. I'm saying that when a lack of closeness is
Mm-hmm.
let to continue to get bigger,
Mm-hmm.
that is where division is
Yeah.
made. That's
Uh-huh.
where these things happen. And I think that's something that we can all relate to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah, the
have,
breakdown. Yeah.
yeah, I've got,
And and like maybe your own responsibility with I had a lot of conversations about this recently with a couple of my girlfriends, obviously different than a marriage, but just being really mindful of like my energy and the people that I spend time with that really fill me up or that I leave feeling really drained. And I've been in relationships that also did that. When your cup is not being filled and you're pouring into somebody else, you're not going to stick around for long. I'm not a person that would react. I'm just, it's my habit to be like this. Yeah, see you later. Like, oh, my cup is not being filled. I gotta go. But I mean, that's not everybody. Somebody else may stick around because they're saddled with a mortgage and debt and kids and who knows what else and make a different decision. So this breakdown that started way before these feelings of I'm going to figure out how to get out of here, like there's some responsibility in both people's parts, the one for not filling the cup and the one for sticking around and saying it's okay for you to not fill my cup. So like there's some responsibility here, and I haven't heard it broken down the way you just did.
well, oftentimes when these guys come to talk to me, they are shattered. They're
Mm-hmm.
ashamed of themselves. They feel intensely sad and disappointed in themselves
Mm-hmm.
and fearful, and they're angry at themselves for allowing their lives to get out of control. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
not that they're trying to figure out, uh, how do I get this broad to stay married with me?
Uh-huh.
It's that they're trying to figure out what it was that went so wrong in their own mindset and
Mm-hmm.
how they can demonstrate the level of contrition that is necessary to show how sorry they really are. Now, do you remember last summer the thing that happened between the CEO and the director of HR at the Coldplay concert where the camera went and saw them for a moment and they were holding each other in a loving embrace and they were both married to other people?
Mm.
And there was that moment where they were just standing there in
Uh-huh.
the fantasy. They're in the
Uh-huh.
fantasy that they're in love and all of this sort
Uh-huh.
of thing. And the camera slammed them with reality. The
Uh-huh.
reality was that this is totally socially unacceptable, that they're married to
Mm-hmm.
other people and that what they were engaged in
Mm-hmm.
wasn't real. And when she went to cover her face and hide, and he dove for a chair, that was the moment that the fantasy broke. And
Mm-hmm.
these relationships outside of a marriage, while they feel very, very real, they're not based on the foundation of reality. They're not
Mm-hmm.
sustainable
Mm-hmm.
relationships. They're not viable things. And when a discovery occurs of infidelity, it breaks that fantasy that there is.
Uh-huh.
And the person who may continue to try to engage in that fantasy, they're really fooling themselves and
Mm-hmm.
just ruining their lives further. And so,
Right.
number one, recognizing that you've engaged in a fantasy, maybe for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
maybe because you feel lonely, maybe
Mm-hmm.
because you're sad in a marriage, Maybe because you don't feel like you're getting the kind of love and attention that you would really like to have at home.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the reasons are, and these things are real. You
Yeah.
engaged in a fantasy with another person who had their own reasons for engaging in their
Mm-hmm.
own fantasy.
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah. And then what does this look like? Like what is when somebody comes to you, man or woman who this has occurred. There's an infidelity and they're trying to pick up the pieces. What does that look like? Is it 12 weeks? Is it 12 steps? Like what is the process from there?
Yeah, I do 90 days or
Mm.
more with
Uh-huh.
somebody because this is a major transition. There's trauma
Mm-hmm.
involved. There's all the personal shame and everything like that. And what they're going through is deeply traumatic
Mm-hmm.
and, honestly, very serious
Mm-hmm.
because these people, it feels like you no longer want to be a person who is alive
Uh-huh.
because it is so deeply affecting in a relationship and you can't believe how much you just messed your life up. So I do
Mm-hmm.
90 days of very intensive work where we're talking nearly every single day and probably every single day at first for sure,
Mm-hmm.
where we're planning what are you going to do today? How are you going to deal with maybe her anger? How are you
Mm-hmm.
going to deal with her hurt? How are you going to stay in a space of being humble when she is accusing you
Mm-hmm.
and she is speaking to you directly from her center of hurt? How are
Mm-hmm.
you going to absorb that in a humble way and speak back into it in a way that is not defensive, that is not blaming, that is not diminishing, and that is not gaslighting? And
Mm-hmm.
so that you can just simply stand there in it, stand your ground, and essentially say, "You're right, and I'm so sorry. And here's what I'm willing to do to help rebuild." And so that you're
Mm-hmm.
staying in your space of humility, even though now your partner has had no chance
Uh-huh.
to really equate themselves with what it is that their reaction is when they discover it. They are enraged, they are
Mm-hmm.
angry, everything has changed for them, so they're going through their own trauma cycle
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they're spinning and they feel out of control and they need to engage with friends and family. And you don't have a lot of people on your side when you're the
Uh-huh.
person who has offended. And
Mm-hmm.
so the role that I play is essentially being the one person in this guy's life
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't judge them. Just goes, "Okay, it's been a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a bad
Mm-hmm.
day, and you're going to do your best to sleep tonight, get up tomorrow and try again with this new thing." And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of strategy. We change strategy and we work on what are the new behaviors? What are the behaviors that got you into this kind of trouble to begin with?
Uh-huh.
What is proper apology? What is
Mm-hmm.
meaning an apology? And what is a lot of times what guys will say is, "Well, I already apologized." Well, apologize again
Uh-huh.
because she needs that reassurance
Uh-huh.
from you that you actually mean it and that you're willing to say it again. This is not a one-time "I'm sorry"
Mm-hmm.
thing. You just destroyed her family. And so you have to recognize that there is a need to show sincere contrition because her view of you is forever changed
Mm-hmm.
now. And that wound is going to stay. And you have to absorb that because that's the cost of this kind of thing. So that's
Mm-hmm.
adjusting the mindset and helping a guy recognize that this kind of thing is not a quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an easy out, and it's something that's going to require a lot of hard work and a heck of a lot of humility.
I feel a book coming, Mr. Author. Like, I mean, you've written other books, but I feel like this is a subject that comes up often in adult lives with people that are married. And I I noticed a trend previously when we were in a down market, like in
Yes.
2010 and 11 and maybe even part of 12, but I was doing a lot of like we had a nonprofit called Hope Against Hope. There was a company called Hope that was doing less than nothing. And so my broker was like, we're gonna have Hope Against Hope. And her and her boyfriend wrote a book about it. And people, dozens of couples would come to the library just, falling apart. They're losing their house. And every single one of them, it was like the same story. Like our bills are behind, we're in this bad market right now. We're in a, what do you call that? I can't even think of the word for it. When you're in a really down market and
A
everything bad.
recession.
Recession.
Right.
Thank you. That thing
Hmm.
I couldn't think of the name of. We're in a recession and their marriage is falling apart because it's like these compounding effects. And so we spent a lot of time, like 15 months was spent at the library with crying couples that needed to get things back on track. And I
Yes.
have to wonder how much of that is our economy and the things we've talked about before, which is the way that our world is. When all of these things stack up, it's like even more pressure. And then you have these marriages just falling apart. So I think there's such a need for the work that you're doing and some like rules around how to pick the pieces up and put it back together.
Well, let's talk about when this sort of thing happens after a good thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so you've got a couple and they have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And the baby, it's just healthy and it's so beautiful. And the parents are so excited to have the baby and they're beginning to go through their parenting journey.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, maybe she has a little bit of postpartum depression. She has a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of irritability, or maybe not. But what begins to occur is that the baby is the center because everything changes when you have a
Yeah.
child and
Oh,
the
100%. Yeah.
values change. What the marriage
Mm-hmm.
even is changes. You can't
Mm-hmm.
expect pre-child marriage after a child. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it can be that it happens that the only thing that the couple is connecting on is baby stuff. And so we're seeing this crater opening up between the couple, but there's a little bit of shame from one or the other in I don't have any right to be feeling disconnected from the other person, but there's no real specific attention to the romance
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
there's just so much to do and
Yeah.
everything's so dirty and there's lots of laundry to do and lots of family to manage and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And after a period of time, this chasm begins opening up wider and
Mm-hmm.
wider. And that chasm is what creates the lack of closeness. And then maybe somebody at work seems interesting and the
Mm-hmm.
texts begin. And then everything kind of goes from there. And this resulted from a good thing. And so
Uh-huh.
when this begins to happen, the chasm begins to start opening up and you go, gosh, I'm not sure that we're really connecting. And when I open up a conversation with my wife or husband
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not really feeling all that connected. I'm not sure how to do that. And
Uh-huh.
the other one may dismiss it. It really is time to sit down with somebody and
Mm-hmm.
check into that, even just a couple of sessions with a therapist to
Mm-hmm.
get into. And it's the kind of work I do in California.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah,
just going to ask. Like, do you take that approach as well, so that a couple
100%.
would, yeah, there's no affair happening. We've recognized as a couple there's some breakdown. Next step is call Jeremy. Like, let's get this back on track and figure out what tools we need to add into our tool belt to be back on track.
Yeah, and there's no shame in it because this kind of thing it happens to everybody and we have to recognize in our lives that every era of our life
Hmm.
requires a new software upgrade. Okay? We've got
So true.
childhood
Uh-huh.
software. We've got teenage software. We've
Hmm.
got we're a disaster in our 20s software and then we graduate into married software and
Hmm.
when we're using old software and we're not upgrading we tend to fall behind or make bad
Hmm.
decisions and so sometimes there's a need to kind of upload some new software a new frame of mind a new idea and, oftentimes that can mean a renewal of how a couple communicates with one another.
Hmm. That's a really good analogy because it's so true. Like, yeah, you can't use the same skill set as you add children or new careers. Or, I mean, I see that happen a lot also in my age group with friends of mine where like their roles are changing. Someone's retiring or someone's taking a different role that now requires travel across the United States. That dynamically changes a relationship. And there's I see a lot of breakdown. I mean, within this age group, I see a lot of breakdown.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
think that's
there
really
is.
important work that you're doing. Where did this stem from? Like, did you just see that there was a need, or like, how did this happen so recently that this became such a big part of your business?
Well, I started seeing because I've been working with married couples for a really long
Sure.
period of
Yeah.
time, and it was like the same conversation that would be coming
Mm.
up between couples. And I'm speaking specifically from the perspective of him having an affair because,
Uh-huh.
women have affairs too, right? Um, but when he has an affair, he often walks in with a great deal of defensiveness,
Mm-hmm.
a great deal of um almost like he has two wives to defend.
Mm.
And so his brain is not referenced properly on what his actual anchor is, which is his
Mm.
wife.
Mm-hmm.
He's been so engaged in other stuff that he can come to feel like he has two legitimate relationships on his hand, and he
Uh-huh.
doesn't. And I
Mm-hmm.
was watching this kind of stuff happen, and I was like, men don't have a lot of people in their camp and they isolate
Mm-hmm.
and they end up becoming so defensive that they end up just going down in flames when their marriage could have been saved if they had
Mm-hmm.
just exercised some humility, some personal strength in how to talk about this stuff and and dealt with it in a different way because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I'd be sitting in my counseling sessions, I would be like, why are you even saying that? You're making it worse. And sometimes I would kick a wife out of session and just sit there with the guy
Uh-huh.
and go, dude, you're about to lose everything. You need to
Uh-huh.
humble up real quick, bro, because she's going to take everything. And she's got everything she needs to do it. And so you need to stop with the denial. And then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes a guy will adjust himself and sometimes they just won't. And I'll just be like, wow, you okay, so you want to lose your family. Like
Uh-huh.
you're acting like you want to
Right,
lose your
right.
family. So I developed it out of this, watching the
Uh-huh.
mistakes that guys are doing
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing that they come to therapy, they have a sense that they're getting ganged up on. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not true, but that's how they feel. And
Sure.
that the therapist is taking the wife's side and they often quit therapy
Mm.
because they feel like it's just too hard and
Mm-hmm.
humiliating for them. So coming at it from the perspective of I'm doing a coaching program where I teach you
Mm-hmm.
skills on how to not ruin yourself and
Mm-hmm.
how to change your approach to
Mm-hmm.
what it is that you're doing in your life and try to reestablish some sense of self-respect. So
Mm-hmm.
I developed this whole thing, and it's really interesting because these guys, there's no one they can talk to. Their wives are
Mm-hmm.
furious and have told everybody.
Of
Everybody
course.
in their
Mm-hmm.
lives now won't talk to them. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have anybody, and so they really respond to having somebody that goes, look, there's there's a way to start walking out of this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a way to go about this because they often just lock up and then mess up any opportunity that they have of repair.
Mm. Well, I think that's, I mean, all of the things that you said are necessary, but I think that you're taking a coaching standpoint on this. Because in my own adult life, I've done a lot of coaching. I mean, I've had a lot of coaching, and I've also spent years in marriage therapy in a previous marriage. And the therapy that I was part of was not helpful. I mean, I had one therapist that had some tools, but just it wasn't helpful. Whereas with coaching, I was really able to like I'm action oriented. I'm a driver, so coaching really worked better for me in putting up, finding boundaries and systems and things that could be done because I'm proactive. I want like something to do. I don't just want to sit and like, let's talk about these feelings. I'm like, I need a plan. Like that's what I'm looking for.
Yes.
So I love that you've made this like this is a coaching relationship that you're getting them through this next 90 days. This is a real plan of action. That's what I think if I was really in a pickle, that's what I would need.
Yeah. That's what I really like about the coaching models. It's just very hands-on. It's
Uh-huh.
very action oriented. And, I'll tell you what, I mean, I am a licensed therapist, and sometimes when I'm doing these consultations, it becomes relatively clear to me that there's a mental health issue that's going on here, and I'll always, make the recommendation as a
Mm-hmm.
part of we're going forward. You're going to go talk to a psychiatrist because
That's a
you,
really good point. I mean, having the background that you have, you're able to do that. And I would only imagine that there's mental health stuff that comes up and then addiction stuff that comes up.
Mhm.
I have a really good friend and she went through a lot of this kind of recently. And when she told me what was going on, I said, "Well, what changed 18 months ago?" And she said, "Oh, he started drinking again." I'm like, "Oh, bingo." Like we went from
Yeah.
her husband had a really good run for a long time and their family was strong. But when that changed, a whole lot of other things changed that were tied to this one event, right? I mean, it just kind of went downhill from there. But I think you're right. Somebody else may not, just an average coach is not going to have the background or the ability to note these things as mental health or addiction and get the proper people in order to work as a team effort to get this person, whole again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does often take a couple of different professionals involved, particularly if somebody is dealing with, I mean, you can't deal with anything in your life if you're addicted and currently
Mm-hmm.
using. You have to,
Mm-hmm.
that comes first. You have
Mm-hmm.
to really unscrew yourself from an addiction. And that's not an easy thing,
Uh-huh.
and
Right.
and
Yeah.
there's a lot of shame involved in all of that as
Mm-hmm.
well. And
Mm-hmm.
so getting help with an addiction thing, if mental health is something that is an issue, somebody needs to go
Mm-hmm.
and have a med consult or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. That's its own thing that I always like require if I'm picking up those
Mm-hmm.
signs. And so that the coaching is the coaching and their mental health is being taken care of by a team.
So let me ask you this. I ran a trauma group for a long time. I had a lot of women dealing with infidelity, specifically and abuse in these groups. And the common theme that I heard is he's a narcissist. This isn't even a word I knew a few years ago.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that a real like mental health thing, or is that a personality trait? Like, what do you do with something like that?
Yeah, that's a really fantastic question because the word narcissist
Mm-hmm.
has come to mean this person doesn't agree with me. And it's become such a popular
Uh-huh.
label
Mm-hmm.
recently. And I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
it's a real thing. People do
Mm-hmm.
have narcissistic traits, and there is something called narcissistic personality disorder. And I've dealt with clients who have that sort of thing. It's a really, really difficult thing. However, you will come across plenty of men and women that say that the last five people that they dated are all narcissists. I'm like, well, gosh, what are the chances? Right? And, there's obvious things out there that you end up not liking about the other person. And you can go on AI and say, hey, is my partner a narcissist? He does this
Mm-hmm.
and he does this and he does this. And unfortunately, a lot of the AIs have a tendency to agree with you, and so you
Mm-hmm.
actually have to put it in your prompt to
Uh-huh.
uh to make it, I don't just need you to agree with me. I need real
Mhm.
information. I have
Mhm.
a real example recently of a man whose wife read one of the popular books right now about narcissistic abuse.
Mm.
And he's not a perfect man. He has a number of his own issues, and he hasn't
As we
always
all
been
do, yeah.
fair with her, of course. But she left him, and essentially said, I read this book, you're a narcissist, you're this and this and this. And he deeply wants to change. He deeply wants to change his ways and remove some of the annoying behavior that he has had.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is, the book has so convinced her that he is irredeemable, that it has robbed him of the ability to change and go
Mm-hmm.
get help and he's grieving not being around his children and has had this terrible thing taken away from him because his wife read a book that convinced her. Now, he recognizes that a lot of things in this book do describe him, and he recognizes where he went wrong. He's also willing to say, I really want to work on this and I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that he is sincere
Mm-hmm.
about that. So sometimes these ideas can create a situation that robs a process of healing
Mm-hmm.
from a couple. And so
Mm-hmm.
there has to be there has to be some grace involved, particularly as somebody is going, I'm sorry for the way that I've been.
Mm-hmm.
Because a narcissist, a real true narcissist,
Mm-hmm.
the process for getting well from that sort of thing is long and painful and really, really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But the process for getting better from being annoying sometimes
Sure, sure.
and making selfish decisions is a
Sure.
whole lot easier.
Sure. So I'm hearing like we should not attempt to put any one person into this bucket because although there are traits of this particular personality, I mean, there's many traits of several, there's many traits out there that you could attached to women. I mean, I can think of a number of them off the top of my head, right?
Yeah,
And of course, like, I mean, just because you're having a bad time during this time of the month or something, I wouldn't associate that necessarily with like, oh, you're manic or you're bipolar, something along
sure.
those lines. So I'm always hesitant to go along with that when somebody throws out this like undiagnosed diagnosis about their partner. Like I wonder what led you to that decision to believe that that's what this person is. And then, yeah, my other question was just like, how often does this come up? And it's really true. This is really a narcissist that they're dealing with versus somebody that just is not agreeing with them, or maybe, they read a book that has skewed their opinion.
So I have an example on the female
Uh
side.
huh.
So for a very long period of time, an ornery woman
Uh
was
huh.
called borderline personality disorder.
Mm
And this is a woman who doesn't agree with you, a woman who argues, a woman who's irritable, all these sorts of things. Now,
hmm. Uh huh.
borderline is a very defined thing.
Mm
And
hmm.
it also can look like borderline when you have a woman who might be on the spectrum and she
Mm
gets
hmm.
really worked up and angry and has fits sometimes. And women on the spectrum are often really not diagnosed as much as they should be. And so they go undiagnosed and people just think, oh, they're borderline.
Mm
Or
hmm.
uh, maybe there is a thyroid issue that a woman has and it makes her look like she's like bipolar
Mm
sometimes
hmm.
and she has issues with her mood and that was getting thrown into either bipolar or borderline.
Mm hmm.
And so these different symptoms, whether it's ADHD, ADHD, on the spectrum, some thyroid issue, some issue even with perimenopause,
Mm
women were being kind of unfairly maligned and diagnosed
hmm.
as borderline when the problem was more um, more detailed than that
Mm
kind of
hmm.
thing. And oftentimes that can make people treat a person very differently when they have kind of armchair diagnosed them with
Mm hmm.
something that is fairly devastating. And I think that this can often happen with men with the title of narcissist
Mm hmm.
or other things like that. And so I think we honestly have to recognize that people can have all manner of different things going on with them, and it doesn't mean that it all falls into one basket very easily.
Right. Yeah. No, I would only imagine. That's interesting. I don't think I've like dissected this topic. I just thought about it when you were saying that and thought this came up so often last year within my trauma group. And it's just this new buzzword that I haven't, like I've heard bipolar for a long time, and that's more associated with women. But this new narcissistic thing it's a real thing. Like I'm not on social media that often, but whenever I am, there's a lot about that. It seems a lot of postings about that, a lot of, if a lot of emphasis is put on this lately. So it's definitely a buzzword.
Yeah, it most certainly is. And the truth about our modern world is that it is a difficult place to live in. We have
Mm-hmm.
had our families split apart. We no
Mm-hmm.
longer engage in multi-generational families being in the same place and kind of living together.
Mm-hmm.
It's been something that's created a lot of isolation. Men go to work. Women are now in the last 50, 70, 60 years going to
Mm-hmm.
work and out of the home. And so it's creating more of that work, work, work mindset. And with the kinds of ways in which we are learning more and more about how our world is run, particularly this last week with the release of the Epstein files and all of this kind of stuff, not to completely derail this into a whole other thing. Um, this is something that is going to create more destabilizing feelings among people. There's a lot of people who, for years and years, have said, you know, I'm tinfoil hat guy, and this is what's going on, and this is what's going on. And other people didn't believe them. Well, it turns out they were
Uh-huh.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people who have had what I would consider to be a more mainstream frame of mind are
Mm-hmm.
going to have a difficult time kind of turning the corner on recognizing the way that our world is changing and the information about what is changing in our world and who is running it.
Mm. Oh, it just brings more people right over to you. Where do people find you, Jeremy?
Yes, indeed. Come to jeremyvanwert.com. My all my information is there about my coaching, my therapy, and all that sort of stuff. So jeremyvanwert.com.
And then all of your, like, what are all your handles under? Like your TikTok and your Instagram and all the great, mindfulness for assholes or meditation for assholes. That was such a funny one. Where does everybody find that?
You'll find me at Jeremy Van Wert everywhere.
Yeah, I'm glad you make it easy. You don't have five different names to go in search of. Yeah, and we always tag
Yes.
you on everything anyway, because yeah, it's always a pleasure spending time with you. I can't wait to see what you come up with next and what we get to talk about next time. I want to encourage you guys, the audience, if you have questions about something in particular, like I wonder if he does that or if that's a topic that we could take up, you should shoot your question over to Jeremy, and then he will be better equipped to answer it on the next podcast. Because this guy loves taking that kind of stuff. I would love to do like you remember like Loveline, that show where they'd like call in their questions and Dr. Drew would take, was it Loveline? What was that show? If Dr.
It
Drew
was
would take it.
Loveline.
Yeah. I want
I
to recreate that reality show. Can we have
I
that?
want to do that too.
Well, you would, I mean, you're my pick for sure. I mean, as a
Yes.
doctor, I'm very unqualified. I just like to have these questions come to me. I'd like to be part of this. I'm in no way qualified to answer any of the questions as a realtor, but I would like to be in charge of getting the questions. I mean, either way, but I think that would be so fun.
Yeah. That would be fun.
Totally. Okay, I'm going to work on this one. I'm going to work on this one. Audience, we need your help. So that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, as always, such a pleasure to spend time with you. Okay, until next time.